In this session, we're going to talk about researching evidence base. This isn't something you're unfamiliar with. You will have done it to an extent in first year. You will have covered areas of it in parts of your behavioural sciences module. This session is aiming to cover the GDC learning outcome for dental public health, to describe the principles of an evidence-based approach to learning, clinical and professional practice, and decision making. So, what is evidence-based practice and evidence-based dentistry? Well, evidence-based practice is the practice of dentistry that integrates the best available evidence that we have with our clinical experience while considering our patient in making decent, good, correct, high standard clinical decisions at the highest quality. Evidence-based practice incorporates us utilising the best research of evidence, of considering our patient values and using our own clinical practice for the components of evidence-based practice, so that everything that we do is at the highest quality of standard by the highest quality of evidence-based research that's out there. As clinicians in dental hygiene therapy, all of the guidelines that we used are based on the highest hierarchy of evidence base. Our guidelines are based on reviews, systematic reviews of the best evidence base out there, and that's what we work by. There's lots of ways that you can search for evidence base, but in this session, primarily, we will be looking at searching for research and journals. We'll be looking at searching journal papers and articles. Researching for evidence base will be a lifelong commitment in your career. The first step in evidence-based dentistry is asking a clear question about a clinical problem. You'll find this when you come to third year to do literature review, where you need to think of what your clinical question is that you're going to base your research on in order to write your literature review. Once you have established your question, you can search for the relevant evidence base. The next step is to appraise the material gathered and decide if it makes a contribution to good evidence about your clinical problem or question. You'll cover that in a bit more depth in dental public health in second year, where we will look at utilising critical appraisal tools for breaking down evidence base, for reading papers basically. You should review research evidence systematically and keep up to date as new evidence emerges. It's your duty as a clinician. By that, if you think about things, you shouldn't expect to still be working to the same guidelines that you're using now in 10 years' time. We know that new procedures will be found, new materials will be in place, etc., etc. So what you know now needs to evolve. So where do we start the search? How can we find evidence base? There are various options. You can ask an expert, go to a book, read a book, go to a library, or search an online database. Coming back to libraries, when you are in your centres on each of your sites, you will have access to the library facilities. In Dumfries, I think you would need to check. There may be a hospital library available to you as well as the campus library in the dental centre. Certainly in Inverness, you have the library available, as you know, downstairs in the Centre for Health Science, and in Stornoway, you have access to the library within the dental centre and also within the hospital setting and also within the Lewis Castle College. Usefulness of the libraries, absolutely. They are there, they host many journals in physical paper form, When you also look in your UHI online search on the UHI Library, the Multisearch, it will tell you whether there are physical copies of the material you are looking for actually physically available to you within the library settings belonging to UHI. So at first, searching for a specific evidence base online, it can really be quite overwhelming due to the volume of material available. Like I said, I'm sure you've all had some experience of this in first year. To give an example, you could be looking for evidence base on something like amalgam, and typing the single word amalgam in could throw anything back from 20 to 70,000 hits at you online of the different pieces of material out there available on the subject. That's not to say that all of those pieces of material are of a high quality. There'll be a range of qualities. Some will be opinions, reports, etc., right up to reviews. When you're searching for evidence base, it's actually a good idea to be quite concise about the words that you use, quite specific about the area, the field or angle that you're looking to find information on. The more specific you are, the more it will reduce the volume of information that's displayed for you. We're going to have a look today at how to search a few online databases. And in this video, we will concentrate mainly on UHI Multisearch via the UHI Library, which I'm sure you've probably all already used. We'll also look at Pubmed, which is quite good and has an extensive database, and we'll look at Google Scholar and the differences between the three of these. There are, of course, other databases that you can go to. There's Medline, ResearchGate, ScienceDirect. You may not have access in all of these different databases, though, to have access to material. So the one advantage to using the UHI Multisearch through UHI Library is UHI has a license to access a vast quantity of material. So your university login may actually allow you on some sites to gain access to the material if it says that you need a login. So any of the databases that you do search, if you're out with UHI and it asks for a login, you can try using your university login if it gives you the option to do that, and you may find that you can access the papers. So the first area we're going to look at is the UHI Library. Like I mentioned previously, the reason we're looking at the UHI Library as your first port of call is that the university subscribes to various journals and to a number of journals that will enable you to access a wealth of full articles. Ideally, you don't want to be paying for articles. And when you do a search on a search engine and it says full text available, that does not necessarily mean that the text is available to you free of charge. However, as I said, the UHI Library, with an institutional login, has access to a whole breadth of papers that you can have without having to pay for it. You'll find if you're on campus, if you're searching from within a UHI premises, or if you're on a UHI network, quite often you don't have to log in to external search engines because it will recognise where you are and that you're logging in or you're searching from a university premises that already has an affiliation. However, as has been with a lot of us working from home at times these days, doing a lot more work from home, there's every chance that you're going to be searching from home and not within a UHI premises. So it's just to remember that if you're on an external database, that you should check and see if you have an institutional login. Okay, so let's start with UHI Library. So we're on the UHI website and we'll come down to Multisearch and we're going to log into Multisearch. At that point, it may ask you for a login. Obviously, I'm on site in a centre at the moment, so it recognises where I am, so it hasn't asked for my login. So we'll start with let's just do a broad search and we'll choose Fisher sealants. So the first thing I'll say is, if you can see here our results, we have over 21,000 results just for the word Fisher sealants. When I was talking earlier about being specific in your clinical question as to what you want to answer, if we take Fisher sealants and we say, well, what is it that we want to know about Fisher sealants? Let's say we want to know the efficacy of Fisher sealants. We'll research again, and immediately that's reduced us down to 3,000 results. Now, 3,000 results is still a lot, and it still can be seen quite daunting. Just to go through a few of the features here on UHI Multisearch that can reduce that number further. If I know that I want to have a full text, I want to be able to see the whole document, then I will click on full text. Now that brings us down to 2,700. You can see along the top here, we're multi-searching. We're not searching for books and e-books or journals. We're searching for everything, okay? So what I could do is decide that I only want to look for journals. So I click this box at the side, and this is your selection criteria to the left-hand side of the screen. And you can add anything else that you want in here if you decide that you only want articles written in English. Here's a really important one. If you want to decide that you don't want your results to be any older than, say, 10 years, then you would click 2020, 21 down to 2011. Excuse me, sorry. If you're not bothered about the age of when the material is from, and it's important to understand that yes, evidence base evolves and we need to keep up to date with it, but that doesn't mean to say that evidence base from historically 5, 10, 20, 30 years doesn't have a place or reference point in it that is information that we need to know about or we need to address. What you also need to do is just read the titles. Scroll down, and you can quite quickly disregard any ones that, that their title isn't within the realm of what you're looking for information-wise. The other thing that's super important down the right-hand side of the screen, and the great tool about UHI Library, is that it tells you whether it's available as a PDF. If the full text, so this is basically telling you that the full text is available here. So if we click on that, Pitt and Fisher sealants as a viable preventative tool for dental caries, it will open it in a new tab. Now it is asking for my login, so it must be from an external source. So you put your UHI login. It's just taking a minute. And there we go, we have full access to the paper. So this is a paper from the Indian Journal of Forensic Medicine and Toxicology. It's from 2021. Looks like quite a nice wee paper. So we just come back to the search screen. Like I said, if you look down the right-hand side, it will tell you whether it's available straight away as a PDF. Click here for full text access. That means it's probably to another external site. Here we go. Here's an example of, I think I'd mentioned Science Direct earlier as another online search engine that you could use. So this is telling you here, click here for Science Direct full access, click here for full text. So that means there may be a couple of options through your UHI login that you can gain access to this text. Fisher sealant in a nutshell, evidence-based meta-evaluation of sealant effectiveness in caries prevention and arrest. That's another relevant paper as per the title, my question that I put in my words for my clinical question. So let's just have a quick look here and see if we can access through Science Direct. And it's recognised that I'm on a university login. So there we go. We have the full paper. It doesn't. Oh, no, excuse me. This is an abstract of the paper. Okay, so it's showing you just an overview of what's in the paper, the abstract, objective, and results. So that's not the full paper. So now we need to see if we can get access to the full paper, which it's giving us the option to here. Choose an option to locate this article. Let's try through Knowledge Network. Let's have a look and see if there's an open access version of it. And it doesn't appear that there is for this paper. Now that's a shame, but that's okay. Actually, there we go. I've missed this at the top. NHS Education for Scotland does not subscribe to this content. I didn't see that, so that had clearly told us. But that's okay. So you can just come back to your searches and you still have another 2,500 that you have the option to go through. What I would say is when you're searching for something on a specific topic, don't get too bogged under. 2,500 papers available to you, a lot of them won't be relevant. When you've gathered enough, when you've actually accessed or identified however many you need, 2 papers, 3 papers, coming up to literature review, you're going to be looking for, more than that, 15 to 20 papers most likely. Once you think you have enough, stop and concentrate on the evidence base, on the material that you've got before you move on. You might find then that when you critically appraise these papers, that they are or they aren't of any use to you, that you might find that there's either bias within them or they're just not that good. And that's okay then to disregard them and come back to your search engine. Just going to close these. So if we go to Pubmed now, and we do the same search. So let's put in just fissure sealants as a start. And we do a search. Now, compared to the UHI search, this has actually only come up initially with 3,700 results. So if we go efficacy of fissure sealants, look at that, that's actually taken us right down to 174. So with Pubmed, maybe you just want to stick with the one singular word, search word of fissure sealants. We can reduce that further in Pubmed. Again, your selection criteria is down the left-hand side. And the one thing about Pubmed that it gives you the option just to select free full text. Now, that's giving us only 51 results left. What you would have to do then is actually read through the titles and, like I said, pick out the ones that are relevant. Some of them may not be anywhere near in the ball area of what you're looking for. This one looks good. Retention of pit and fissure sealants versus flowable composites and permanent teeth. Now, that's a systematic review, and we will talk about this later, and certainly within dental public health, about the difference in hierarchy of evidence base, the difference between reports, case studies, clinical trials, and systematic reviews. Just very briefly, a systematic review is not a study. A systematic review is a review of various studies and collating that information together and letting you know what the best or worst of the evidence base is. Let's just have a look and see here if we click on one of these. Caries preventative effect of glass ionomer, fissure sealants on permanent teeth. Again, it's a review, but let's just click in it and see what it takes us to. And again, you can see from this, it's showing you background methods results. This is just an abstract. It's telling you it's an abstract. Full text links, what you would do, free PMC article. Sometimes you find at the bottom there's links, but if we try through one of these, we may get a login. Okay, so that's the full article. You can tell now it's the full article because once you come past this initial abstract, you've got an introduction and then your full methods. So that's available in HTML format. But there we go. If we click up here, it's also available as a PDF, and you can now save that straight to your computer, and that is the full paper. Moving on, let's have a look at Google Scholar. So we'll just do the same thing again, and we will put in efficacy of Fisher sealants. Now, the difference with Google Scholar, if you notice down the left-hand side, you don't have nearly as much to go with in reduction of your search criteria. You've really just got the age of the paper. But you can custom range it. As I said earlier, if you don't want a paper that's more than 15 years old, you could say, for example, don't want to go from more than 2007 to 2021. Now, at this point, before we apply that, we have 8,500 results. So if we add that in, we've now got 6,500 results. So let's reduce it even more and say I only want papers from the last 10 years on how well Fisher sealants perform. And we've got 6,000 results there. Again, down the right-hand side, it will tell you whether there's a PDF available. You want to just, again, same thing, read through them, read the titles. Are the titles relevant to what you're looking for? Comparative efficacy in preventing plaque formation around Pitt and Fisher sealants, a clinical trial. So that's a trial. There's a good one, Sealants Revisited, an efficacy battle between two major types of sealants, a randomized controlled clinical trial. Randomized controlled clinical trials are nearly at the top, highest end of the pyramidal hierarchy of evidence. So if we click full view, page apparently isn't working at the moment. Okay, let's try the HTML view. And we have the full article there. Once we've come past this initial abstract, we're from the introduction down. Now, it may be a case that you just need to print that. I'm not seeing that it's actually available as a PDF. The hierarchy of evidence is something you're going to spend a lot more time on in dental public health in semester 2, but it's worth having a look just now, having doing a bit of research on it. I've left the Tricia Greenhall paper for you in this section here in the induction section, and that's really useful in just, one, giving you indications on how to initially read a paper, and two, giving you an overview on the differences between case reports, cross-sectional studies, cohort studies, etc., right the way up to systematic reviews as to where they sit on the pyramid of evidence. So you can see here in this diagram, in this pyramid here, where it goes from the weakest, being case reports, opinions, papers, and letters, up to the strongest, being meta-analysis and systematic reviews. And like I already said, systematic reviews are actually reviews of the evidence base that has been carried out by way of studies or clinical trials. So randomized control trials are right at the top of the pyramid. They usually begin on patients who already have a disease. The patients or subjects are randomly allocated to one intervention or another, and groups are followed up and analysed. If we take, for example, cross-sectional surveys down here, cross-sectional surveys tend to have representative subjects, people who are either interviewed or examined, and they are studied to assess an answer to a question. The data from these surveys could be collected at the time, or it could be collected retrospectively thereafter. So But like I said, the information is there for you to go and research the differences in evidence base that sits on the pyramid, the hierarchy of evidence. So this is just a bit of extra information for you on some of the guidelines that are out there and the Cochrane Library. Don't know if you've heard of the Cochrane Library. The Cochrane collaboration is basically, it's an independent network of researchers whose aim is to basically promote evidence-based informed health decisions. They go through all of the evidence-based material to produce high quality systematic reviews of what's available. The Cochrane Library contains well over 200 systematic reviews that are of relevance to dental and oral health. So it's worth having a look. Sometimes you can find as well, if you're searching for a specific piece of evidence on a subject and you go to the Cochrane review and you find something in their library, it's sometimes actually worth looking through the references of their reviews for access to papers. SDSET, BSET, BSP and SIGN, as you know, are the guidelines that we work towards, we work with under dental therapy. They're what we base our guidance on clinical practice on. And they base the guidance they give us on the evidence base out there that they find, that they collect together. A bit like a review. It's their review of the evidence that creates their guideline. So at this point, I would suggest that you go choose a subject. I've left a short task for you to just choose a topic and search for it. Go and put it into a couple of the different search engines. Start off with UHI Library and go through them. Try Pubmed, try Google Scholar. You can try various ones and see. It would be good then if you use the Greenhall paper to try and identify, if you download a few papers, identify your evidence base. Where does it sit in the pyramid of evidence? Is it relevant? Is it a study? Is it a trial? Is it a personal opinion? Is it just a report by somebody? Is it a case study? Try and figure out what it is. And then try and rank it, where you would rank it on the pyramid of evidence. And the last thing that I would urge you to do, because you need to do this anytime you search for evidence or you cite it within any documented work that you do academically, you need to produce a bibliography. So you need to produce a reference list at the end of that. So I would urge you as well to get used to doing that and go back to the Harvard Referencing Guide and make a reference for the papers that you found.